The purpose of the meeting is that this came out of what happened at last week's council meeting, where a group of citizens came to express concern about the feral cat situation, specifically at Bonnie Acres. From that, and from that discourse, we realized that there were these cat colonies throughout the city that people were taking care of, that were expressing concern about, and so from that we decided to call together this community meeting to see where we could do to create a strategy, identify resources, identify the areas that volunteers are already working in, and look to see what other communities are doing as well. Clearly, controlling the population through humane needs is the goal. Reducing the population, the spay-neuter issues that were brought to our attention last week are all viable ideas that we'd like to explore tonight. So before we get into that, though, as we saw last week, the big key was citizen input. Many of us were unaware, even with small colonies in our existing neighborhoods, that this issue was actually as large as it was. So to start off the meeting, I'd like to ask for somewhat of an open forum situation where people who would like to express their thoughts and concerns or point out something constructive that they'd like us to look at can come and for a brief moment, so everybody gets a turn, talk about that from an open forum situation. From there, we're going to take those thoughts and put them on the boards as identified issues. From there, anybody who's interested can help. We're going to go into small groups, and there's a couple of rooms available, and talk about specific issues. One that many people have talked to me about, that I'll use it as an example as what I hope to accomplish in the small group setting, is the spay and neuter ordinance. Many towns have them. We have model ordinances. We have people in the room who are very familiar with what works and what doesn't. Clearly, the City of Bristol is not interested in enacting something that's either difficult to enforce, or that we can't enforce, or it isn't able to be done with the resources that we have. So that might be a potential small group breakout for those of you who have interest specifically in that ordinance component. From there, I'd like to come back and talk about what those action items are, and then we'll decide how best to present them as a strategy. If anybody has brought donations, we'd like to take an accounting of them and give them to the groups that are doing the work currently and be able to track those donations. And then, if it's deemed necessary, we can talk about a future meeting day. I do know that Councilman Carlson has been in contact with Mayor Cockayne, and did he have a message that he wanted to share?
Yes, he did. The mayor has discussed with me the possibility of forming a task force to look at the issue of the feral cats and whether or not we need to get into greater detail on how to deal with the problem. So, in this case, if this meeting tonight doesn't solve the issue and if we have citizens interested in it, we'd be glad to form a task force to look at that. And you would merely send a small resume to the mayor's office stating your qualifications if you got to be a citizen of Bristol, and he wants to pick a small group to look at the issue and perhaps map the cat problem, where it's at in particular colonies, look at it, look at the ordinances, and see what can be done about it. So if anybody is interested, please feel free to just write a simple resume, a simple little explanation of who you are, your qualifications, or if you've served on a committee before. We'll form a task force as necessary.
Thank you. Okay, so to start, is there anybody on this side of the room that would like to share some thoughts? And when you do so, just please be aware that while there are some news crews microphones up here, our microphones are not on. So if you could just say your name and your address for the record so that we could take that in for the meeting minutes. Okay, this side of the room, anybody? Just come on up. You can
Tell me if I hit a minute.
Right.
Okay, first of all, love animals.
Name
Had
and
lots.
address.
I'm sorry. My name is William Fuller. I live at 67 Dino Road in Bristol. I've been there for 35 years. We don't seem to have a cat problem. So I feel bad about the people who do have one. And I like cats. I like dogs. We've had them in the house and pets for many years, and I think that's a wonderful, appropriate thing. By the same token, I don't take wild animals into my house. So if a person has an interest in a pet for their home, I think that's great. And if people want to spend their money on food and shelter and neutering, that's also great. I don't want my taxes paid to take care of wild animals because someone else thinks they like cats or dogs or rats or skunks, whatever it might be. So I'm against anything that costs the city money, because that costs me money. So all the people that like these animals should take care of them. Take them into your house. Some stray cats probably would love that. The wild animals, the true feral cats, I think needs to be disposed of. I know that sounds terrible, but if just think about once one of them becomes rabid. You know, I heard about cat fights. I know all about cats. They have cat fights constantly. And it's going to go from 1 to 10 to 10 to 100. And by the time you get to 1,000 rabid cats, people aren't going to like that very much. We need to do something about it sooner than that. So call me a terrible, awful person if you like, but I don't want 3,000 rabid cats running around amongst kids or adults. We'll all regret it if we let that happen.
For example, Friends of the Bristol Animal Shelter is a group that formed, and I believe it's now a nonprofit, isn't it, Lindsay? To care for, without taxpayer expense, the issues that arise from our pound. So we have a group that cares for the Pequabic River watershed that flows through town. Again, a group of dedicated volunteers. Other than putting in an ordinance, potentially, if that is something this group decides, and dealing with organizing existing resources, at this point, I'm not sure we need to start expending city resources at this point. We'll see where this conversation takes us, but I think that there's a lot of power in volunteers, and really, Mr. Fuller, you'd be amazed if you took the tour I took last weekend, what volunteers are currently doing in this town.
That's what I'm saying. Anybody wants to volunteer to take care of them, that's a wonderful thing.
It's a point that is well taken. Bobby?
Oh, sorry. Roberta Chameleon, Kitty Quarters, 81 Savarese Lane, Burlington. First of all, as part of TNR, usually the cats get their inoculations, so there's less of a rabid problem than you might think. But the suggestions I'd like to make is to take the situation beyond TNR, and I would like to see committees for an assembly line shelter build, where we can involve the community in helping actually build these shelters that the colonies will need, involve the whole community, educate them to the need, educate them to the opportunity to help cats. Identify and process other colonies. There are 4 subsets of that, which I won't take up your time with. Set up a recuperation and location in a holding center. Most kittens are going to come along pretty soon. As the spring happens, we want to catch the mother and the babies, keep them together so the mother can help the babies be better suited to be adopted, and then take those babies and put them in shelters where they can be adopted, because they haven't been feral yet, and they have an opportunity for a good life, so they don't have to live outside. I'd like to set up a local food bank, human and pet. This gives us an opportunity for an event to get us together, to get to the community, to get food, to help the feral feeds, to help the people who are in trouble in town, who have been helping cats and others, and get, again, the education out there. And there are some subsets for that. I'd like to see a representative who's had some experience with TNR, who can understand the bigger picture that I think has to happen to help limit the problem of more cats than on Better Connecticut. Trap, neuter, return. Better Connecticut, as you know, is part of Scott Haney's world, and he's a very much a cat enthusiast, and I think if we showed people how to build these shelters on his show and got the greater community involved, we could help cats more than Bristol. Get the word out there, and because we're here because we all love cats. So let's help more than Bristol. Let's make Bristol a model for other towns too, like Willimantic, I think it was, had a great system. And then, of course, we have to coordinate with the police and animal control and each other. Thanks.
Thank you. Lindsay?
My name is Lindsay Rivers. I live at 120 Mercier Ave. I volunteer with the Bristol Hounds. Mostly we deal with just dogs, but we also do get cats in there occasionally. When we do deal with the Bristol Hounds, we always tell them about the low-cost neuter and spay. A lot of people do not know about any low-cost neuter and spay. That's huge. People get a cat or a kitten, they don't get it from a shelter, it's not neutered, they barely have enough money to buy their own food, and they just never get it fixed. And that's, people have outside cats. The cat goes outside, it gets pregnant, and then that's what creates this monster. I believe that we need to do a neuter and spay law, where if you get an animal, it has to be neutered and spayed. If, even from a landlord, if it's not neutered and spayed and your cat gets caught or brought to the pound, you are responsible for that dog and you get a fine. Even dogs create more dogs, so a lot of the dogs that we get in the pound are not neutered and spayed. So I think we just need to come up with a neuter and spay law that is required that you have to get your cat neutered and spayed. That will be a huge problem right there solved. And let the word out, maybe get a bus to come in. There's buses that come in and will neuter and spay your animal on the bus for sometimes $10 or $20, full of volunteers. So we could look into something like that, that we could have come in the city for all animals. And then obviously the trap, neuter, release is huge. That's done by all volunteers also. Nothing out of the taxpayers' money. So that's that would be a huge help. And half of the cats would be eliminated if everything was fixed.
Hi, my name is Jeff O'Donnell. I've been doing TNR in Bristol for about 12 years. I'd like to address some of the concerns that have been mentioned. There is an ordinance in Wyndham that addresses everyone's concerns here tonight. It's worked pretty well over the last few years. It's going to address Mr. Foley's concerns. It's not going to cost the taxpayers a dime. And an ordinance like this will actually save the taxpayers money, because with a lot less cats, because people are now going to be getting them fixed, and TNR is going to be done on a widespread basis throughout town. With a lot less cats, the animal control officers will be getting a lot less calls to go pick up dead cats in the road, which they are required by law to do. And we have to pay them as taxpayers to do that. So that's going to save them a whole lot of time. They're going to get lots less calls from people complaining about big feral cat colonies that are out of control. They won't have to spend time dealing with those people. So the TNR really is just a win-win all around. It's not going to cost the taxpayers a dime. There's lots of grant money out there available. There are state voucher funds available. And there are lots of people that are in the room tonight, like myself, that do TNR, that have been doing it for a while, that spend their own money. So it will not cost the taxpayers a dime for all of us who are concerned about that. Another one of Mr. Foley's concerns was the incidence of rabies. The research shows that the incidence of rabies in cats is extremely rare. So we don't have to worry about thousands of rabid cats out there attacking us. And with the TNR program in place, there's going to be a lot less cats, and that's going to lower that extremely rare incidence of rabies. And we've already talked about exceptions. There are exceptions written in other ordinances throughout the state that cover people that have show cats that want to breed. That's not going to be a problem. Usually there's a small license fee that's required to be paid just to make sure it's legit. The TNR ordinance is mainly going to target two distinct populations. It's people that don't have any money to get their pets fixed, so they just keep on letting them have litters after litter. And I know lots of people like this. I've paid to get their cats fixed. And that tends to solve the problem, because what they tend to do is just give away the kittens to other people that cannot afford to get them fixed. The cycle continues. So if we nip the problem at the source, that's going to solve a big part of the problem. The other source that this ordinance would target would be people who are feeding feral colonies, and this ordinance would not punish them if they make a reasonable attempt to enlist the help of people like myself to get the cats fixed. 99 out of 100 people that I've dealt with over the years have taken up my offer of help to get the cats fixed. We'll pay for it, we'll do everything. We need an ordinance on the books to address the people that don't want help and that like seeing the kittens born, that continue to feed and feed and feed and let the kittens be born, and then they have kittens, and that spreads throughout town. That's what this ordinance is going to solve, those two distinct problem sources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Jamie, did you want to talk about the drop-off that you have arranged?
Sure.
You can do it from there, but just let your voice project.
I'm a little closer, so mind as I said that. I'm Jimmy Shiloh with Legacy of Love Animal Rescue. My husband and I rescue privately. Born and raised Bristol resident. He just recently bought a house and moved. I got brought into the Bonnie Acre cat project right now, and I'm overseeing it with the trapper Lisa here. I have set up with Pet Supply Plus over on Farmington Avenue for a drop-off, a permanent drop-off place that will carry over to the next housing property that we do. So once we're set at Bonnie Acre and everything is complete for a while, it'll carry over to the next place. So it'll be something, I mean, they're getting free exercise, they're loving it. But right now it's set up there. They have bins, we'll have volunteers, and we also have on Facebook a GoFundMe account set up for cash donations. Legacy of Love and Morrisville also has a bank account set up at People's Bank. They can PM me personally on Facebook. And if anyone has any questions, I mean, there are shelters in place at Bonnie Acres. We have trapped some cats. We have 2 baby kittens going into the vet. There's some there. There's some that have come out already. 5 altogether that we're working on this week. We're meeting with the residents of Bonnie Acres. And flyers have gone out to them that we're trapping. And if anyone has any questions, we're working after. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So anybody who might not have heard her, Pet Supply Plus is taking donations for those who'd like to help. Are there kittens available?
Not right at this time. There's 2 that are going to be going to New Hope Clinic, and we do have foster for them. They're young enough, I believe, about 5 to 6 months old. So we're hoping that those 2, after they're socialized and in foster for a little while, that we can adopt them out.
Does anybody else want to offer any comments during open forum?
Do you want me to stand here, or?
As long as you project, you can stand wherever you'd like.
I can't project, okay. My name is Annie Hornish. I'm the Connecticut State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. And I've heard some mention, I came in a few minutes late, so I apologize, about mandatory spay-neuter ordinances. And one consideration that I think should be made is sometimes there are unintended consequences to such ordinances where people might feel if it might result in higher relinquishments or abandonments, where people might feel that they have to, they might feel like they won't continue feeding a colony or caretaking for a colony, which could have the opposite result. So what we promote instead is what's been discussed here, TNR, low-cost spay-neuter, and we feel that's a more appropriate response to the issue of surrounding community cats.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to comment on?
Okay.
We have one right here.
I'm Gail Black from Plainville. I volunteer at Mary's Kitty Corner. I run into a lot of people that, well, I think it's the people that are the issue. They get a kitten and then it gets old. It gets to be a year or 2. And then I've been offered a couple kittens because they want a kitten now. And yeah, we need to tell people, I guess, let people know how wonderful the other cats are, because you don't just give them up, and so a lot of them abandon them. And we trapped a cat about 2 months ago in a parking garage where I work in Hartford, and we trapped it in 30 seconds, and it's at my girlfriend's house right now. But it's a lot of the I don't know, I guess like this guy was saying, people get the kittens and then they get pregnant and then they give it to the other people that can't afford to to spay and neuter, and it just goes on, and then they're not aware of how great the kittens are. They just keep getting them, and it doesn't really solve any issues.
So an education component
Yes,
is important.
and the other thing is microchipping, because I noticed one of the pictures in the papers had this black cat, and it wasn't feral because it was fat. You know, it came to eat. So it's not just ferals coming to eat. So people need to keep their cats inside. I don't think you should pass an ordinance for that, but cats are safer inside. They're much safer. If you really care for your cat, you need to keep it inside. You know, unless you're living out in the country where it's not going to bother other people. But you've got a neighbor, you don't want to bother your neighbor. You shouldn't. So.
We've had a couple of those situations this week. Thank you.
Anybody else? Frank?
Yeah.
Would you just stand up so people can hear you?
Sure. I was just wondering if anybody from TNR can probably answer this. What is the age limit where a cat can be rehabilitated? In other words, can be restored to a home as an adoptee? What's the age limit? 1 year?
Chuck?
Anybody?
Yeah, a lot of cat rescue people will differ on that. A general rule of thumb that I like to use is any cat that's under 12 weeks can easily be tamed and found a home for. Anything after that can still be done. It just gets harder and harder. That's all. I mean, I've tamed feral cats that were 6 months old. Beyond that, it just gets harder. So it can be done, but generally, once a cat is totally feral, it's not humane to keep it inside. If you can't tame it, it's better off living its life outside. And as long as it's fixed and it's got shot. Research shows that that's what feral cats want to do. They want to be outside if they are truly feral.
Thank you. Lindsay?
I received a feral cat when he was 5 weeks old, and he is now 14 years old. He lives in my house. I had him fixed, neutered. He wasn't the friendliest for the first 6 months, but he is a great cat now. He lives a normal life. He's inside, and we got him at 5 weeks. I have another instance where the cat was even younger than 5 weeks, and there was no way but to TNR the cat and let it live back outside. So it all depends on the cat, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Just for maybe unusual circumstances. We live in South Mountain, and a cat came from South Mountain, and he was a good 2 years old at least, in feral, where we had the toughest time trapping him because it was just too smart to go in the trap, and we ended up getting him, and he has become the most cuddly indoor cat that you will ever meet. He's afraid of people he doesn't know, but with us, he loves to be inside, and he cuddles. He had to be at least 2 years old. So, I guess there's not a black and white on it, but they all deserve a chance. Right.
Bobby?
I courted an outside cat for 5 years, and I brought him in last year. And he doesn't fight with my 5 others. He's just happy as you know what? He doesn't even go near the door. The other kids go, yeah, what's out there? And he goes, been there, done that. So we had a heated shelter that my husband made, put it on the porch. I had to court him for 5 years before I could bring him in. He's not a bother now. And my second thing is, for those of you who are interested in the hidden dangers to cats that roam outside, the author of this book, House Cat, How to Keep Your Indoor Cat Sane and Sound, will be at the Burlington Library February 18th at 6:30.
I'd like to clarify a couple terms. I don't know if anyone has explained what the term feral really means. Feral means truly wild. That means the cat was born outside and is grown up outside, like a wild animal. A stray cat that you see is not necessarily a feral cat. A stray cat can be somebody's pet that was abandoned. And yes, it can be outside for years and then brought inside and made someone's pet because it used to be someone's pet. But if a cat grows up outside and it's outside for years, that cat probably is going to be truly feral. So there is definitely a difference. A stray cat could either be a feral cat or someone's a female cat. So there is a big difference.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Anything else for open forum? Okay. Oh, Sean.
I'd just like to say that I don't think that an ordinance would be required. I think most of the instances where the cats aren't spayed and neutered is because the families can't afford it, and once they have access to that, it'll remedy itself. I don't think the government needs to tell people what they should be doing with their pets, and they shouldn't have to have a show cat if they want to have a cat and, let's say, breed it and then keep the kitten years later, you know, and not have to have two cats at home. It shouldn't be up to the government, I don't think. It's, you know, we can encourage people to do the right thing and provide services without having to enforce some kind of punishment if people don't follow whatever the guideline is.
Okay. I mean, I think it's important for everyone to know that there are some guidelines in Bristol for domesticated animals. There are limits. We've heard that there's a lot of people who are over that limit, and if they're responsible pet owners, you know, then that's fine. I think it becomes an issue when you have non-responsible pet owners and there's an impact to the rest of the community. So those are kind of the issues that I'm most interested in. Those who are responsible, we're not looking to tell anybody what to do with their pets. But when there does create a community issue, then I think government does need to respond, whether it's organizing volunteers or looking at an ordinance or trying to create a support group to support whatever that issue is. So for those of you who are aware, I do have the general orders for Bristol as to what that encompasses. Domesticated animals are covered. So we do have other ones as well, and they really are all over the gamut. Some are very, very strict. The Wyndham one is a model one, which is very animal friendly. There's other communities that have taken a very strong stance. Those tend to be more in urban centers where clearly there's a lot of issues. So,
Council, when the situation arises where there may be a health issue involved, and there's an overabundance of animals in one house, and I think that's what you're talking about.
yes.
In the past year or two, has the city of Bristol addressed that issue? I mean, have they executed the ordinance as they're supposed to?
It's mostly pertaining to dogs, and yes, they have. I spoke with both our animal control officer and our Bristol-Burlington Health District to see exactly what kind of stats they had as it related to this issue. Cats are non-existent as an issue. There's been no spread of disease. The health director has nothing on file. Obviously, it's something they're aware of, and it's something that they monitor, but there's been no instances in Bristol where that is a specific health issue. In terms of an abundance of cats or any type of animal in one house, we have had a few instances of that, and they've been told they needed to reduce their population and license appropriately, which is a whole nother separate issue, licensing. You must have a license for your dog in the city of Bristol. You'd be amazed at how many people do not. So those tend to be the enforcement issues and the issues that are encountered at this point.
I'd like to just give one quick example of why I think the ordinance would be necessary. I want to specifically address Sean's point. It's going to be rare, but there was a woman who I was aware of years ago in Bristol who let her cat have 18 litters.
Oh my gosh.
The poor cat was only 6 years old, and it finally died. If a cat has too many litters, it takes a toll on their life, and that's what killed that poor cat. And this woman just continually dumped the kittens once they were no longer little and cute. So the cat would have a litter, they'd run around her apartment, the kids would have a lot of fun, and she would go dump them. I could not get her to get the cat fixed. So that one woman probably has been the cause of potentially thousands of cats running around Bristol. So she has dumped litter after litter of cats. And that's what drives up taxpayer costs, because now the ACOs get calls about cats running around, dead cats on the road. That's what this ordinance would target. Very specific people like that, which it's not going to happen too often. But I mean, 18 litters, there's got to be a limit.
And I would just want to add that, you know, that's I hate to use the term selective enforcement, but, you know, no one goes around knocking on doors to see if dogs are licensed. But if your dog causes a problem and it's not licensed, therefore the city officials have a remedy. You know what I'm saying? So an ordinance isn't there
to, again, go around knocking on everybody's doors, and we suddenly have, neuter police in Bristol, and they're going around to see that everyone's, neutered their animal. It's a way of dealing with a problem when we have a problem.
Many of the issues, as Mary's just said, are complaint-driven. For those of you who are following code enforcement, most of those are complaint-driven. We're not going around knocking on doors, checking to see how many closets you have and if your fire alarms are working. That's your job. But when, in fact, there is a problem for life safety issues, we have been stepping in.
I have a quick question. Then. What kind of complaints are there about feral cats?
This conversation was sparked specifically by the situation at Bonnie Acres. However, as that one came to light, a lot of other sections of Bristol, certain neighborhoods that have a population of community cats, also weighed in. So now we're having a discussion about how best to control those populations and to make sure that there's strategies in place, if only making sure everybody knows. There's probably 4 or 5 groups in Bristol that have been actively doing this for 10 years. I had no idea. And in fact, there's one very large colony in my neighborhood. I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of the cat shelters, but I had no idea that volunteers had been manning it and participating in trying to capture and neuter them for years. So it's an education piece, I think, is the overarching message, and from there we need to look at other issues as well.
Has anybody looked into the effect that cats have on birds?
I got several emails about that today, actually. Yes?
I can give you an example.
Can you just stand up and talk loudly so everyone can hear you?
What's your name, too?
Sorry. My name is Antoinette Nicotera. I live in 7 Hillcrest, Avon. But I originally lived in Bristol for about 10 years. And I worked for a company in Bristol. And where I lived in Bristol on Green Street, there was a colony of about 28 feral cats, and I lived there for about 10 years. And within that time, there was feral cats getting hit by cars, there was cat fights, there was, it was just horrible. My car was being sprayed by cats, there was kittens being born. In 2009, 6 kittens showed up underneath my truck. Found another kitten in the garbage can covered in oil, and it was just horrible. And I had to take care of these kittens. I had to bring them to the vet. Their eyes were horribly disfigured, and I had to take care of that, vet those and all. And my friends and I, we decided to go to my work and ask all my coworkers to donate their custom money to get all these cats fixed. So we did a TNR. We didn't even know how to do it. We just watched it on YouTube, and then we contacted this lady. Her name was Carrie, and she had an organization that she did. She put together. She was just like me, and then she found out about this problem, and then she started her own organization. And we rented the traps from her, and we went out into Green Street and trapped all these cats when we were just like people like you. So, and then the Bristol Observer did an article on us, and this didn't get anyone's attention either. So we were in the Observer, nobody took notice. So, and then our company did a press release on us. I know this is small. If anyone wants copies of these, I have them. And then, so that was like our coworkers' money. So this article, it didn't get like anyone in Bristol's attention, but it got people like you, everybody like you. They called us, and they people like you donated to us. So we got donations from people in Bristol, and so we kept going. We're not an organization or anything like that, but we still get donations, and we now have TNR 119 cats, and we hooked up with Jeff, and Jeff's like a normal average guy, you know. He's an accountant. He has just does this for the cat, and so like we just take donations, and those cats on Green Street are all fixed because of the people at my work and people like you, and this is just like awesome that all this is coming about. I mean, this all needed to happen, so TNR is the only way. And the feral cats, I mean, they need people to do this, so the ordinance needs to happen, and no matter what anything anybody says, that needs to happen, and we need to keep going with it, so please keep going with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I bring up something else?
Yep, I just want to say one thing too. If anybody here is from an area that's experiencing an issue, make sure that you let us know that as well. We think we know where most of the hot spots are, but if we don't, we can share that information at the end as well.
My name's Pat Brett. I live on 28 Joseph Street here. You know how like when it's the season and the cats are breeding and stuff, and then all of a sudden you see in the papers, free kittens, free kittens. Could we have it where like the town has like a place instead of them posting the kittens to make sure that they're getting spayed and neutered, like a drop-off area or a pickup, the town is by a pickup, and then we know that these cats are getting fixed before they're given to homes.
I think that's one of the long-term strategies that Bobby's been talking about, and it's something that we're going to have to address as the, I think we have short-term, mid-term, and some long-term issues as well.
Yeah, because no matter what the cost is for some of these spaying clinics, people don't want to go through the hassle of it or even the financial aspect of it. They're not going to get it done.
Right.
So I think it'd be a good idea to catch it that way, and it'd be a lot easier to keep control of it better.
Yep.
I have a comment over there.
Sure.
I think it would be great too if, whether there was something written in the paper, that this company, the dangers of posting a free animal to anyone, that opens up the door to a whole lot of harm that most average citizens do not realize. Even if people do get into this situation, that they do have free kittens to give away, perhaps we could have something in place to help find those kittens in safe homes rather than just to any stranger that has a cat. I would go into the horror stores with that, but I'm sure most of you that are involved in this world know them, and the ones that don't, you don't want nightmares coming.
Okay. The shelters usually make you fill out a 6-page application, and you're not guaranteed a cat again. So,
okay. And I thought somebody else had their hand up. Eric?
I just wanted to say that this is a situation that is definitely going to require more community outreach to all the citizens. We've got a group of people here obviously very interested in it, but it's going to require a little more outreach, and certainly the mayor's office should put something on his Facebook page and come up with a system of tracking the fatalities and all the rest of that. As far as the ordinance question, it's a good question. We should look at it. But I believe they say you can't legislate morality. You aren't going to be able to legislate compassion either. So we will need more community outreach that people understand what's going on, what the problem is. A way to approach this problem and get to more people that way through individuals.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments?
Hi, I'm Brian Bonina. I live at 85 Woodland Street. And Jeff touched on an issue that I think needs to be addressed even further, and that is irresponsible citizens who just abandon their pets. I know it often happens in maybe apartment complexes and stuff like that, but there should be consequences to that because somebody else has to pick up that responsibility. In my case, I've taken in 5 adult cats, and I know that they were abandoned because they were very friendly. And I cared for them for a long time, and then now they're part of my life. So it really chokes me up to know that there's so many people here who are concerned about the same issue that I've been concerned with for a long time, and I'm really happy to see the turnout tonight.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, Jamie first, and then we'll come back to Frank.
Just wondering if there's a way to do kind of like a safe haven drop-off for people that are low income, who are in a sticky situation, where they lose everything, whether it's a house fire or something else, or a lot of times people people get put in a situation and they have to choose. And unfortunately, it does suck. I'm not, I don't ever want to have to choose my dog or, my kids. But in that situation, how do you choose that without being arrested for abandonment if there's an ordinance in place like that? Or most of the places, we're full. We can't take any more. As long as I've been in rescue, I can personally take in so many. I have to turn people away every single day, and it breaks my heart. So if there was maybe something in Bristol where there's more of, like I said, maybe at least the babies, or if it's a moving situation and they can prove they're being evicted, something like that set up to where there's a statue on it. Not just any Joe Schmo can come in with 6 cats and go, here you go. I just don't want a cat anymore. It's not cute. It's 6 months old and I don't want it. But if there was a safer way to go about it, instead of having them put outside and somebody opening the back door and letting them go outside.
Does anyone know if Val Inc. is still in the Litchfield area?
Yeah, but they don't have a facility.
They don't have a facility.
They don't have a facility. They just held place.
Oh, see, they used to have, I've been there. Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, Bobby, 1 second. Frank was next.
Yeah, I just want to address Eric Carlson. The ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, is actually law, correct? And there are consequences when a law is broken. And the law has a peculiar way of inhibiting breaking the law. And I think it's important that in some instances government does need to play a role. It would be great if people were as moral and as thoughtful as you like them to be, but unfortunately, human beings also don't fit into that group. And sometimes government doesn't.
To that point, I would say that tax evasion is a crime, tax avoidance is not. So when you enact laws, you have to be careful. You don't want to create a hard hammer situation, which creates more avoidance.
Well, I think the model, the template
certainly we'll look at
that Lumen has created and has enunciated does become in the sledgehammer. So we'll check it out. Make it right.
Bobby?
Jamie, I didn't turn around to look at you, sorry. Am I understanding you correctly that you're looking to help people who can't keep their animals in their homes?
No, I'm just wondering, like he was mentioning, if there is a way to have more of a safe people drop off if somebody is being evicted, so it can address, the pet not being left behind. Like a lot of those low-income places
Well, I don't know about the eviction part, but I can put you in touch with 2 foundations whose sole purpose in life is to try and keep pets with their owners.
Okay.
So if you give me your email at the end, I'll give you those 2 grant sites, the foundation sites.
You don't care for it.
Yes, I work with Karen Pomoy. She told me.
But we all need a resource for all of these sites. You're naming off sites, but we need
We're going to get to
resources
that.
to get there. Yeah.